Thank you very much, Mike, for that very kind introduction. And I don't know if you'll have any time in your preparations for your own campaign, but maybe I can get you to do some speech writing for me. You know, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have a reputation for having silver tongues, and that was a wonderful introduction. You summed up what we've been trying to do as a party very, very well, so I might press you into action to work on a few paragraphs in my speech for convention. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I want to acknowledge a few people in the audience tonight that I'm very pleased to see here. We have a member of the House of Assembly, Keith Hutchins is here. Thanks very much Keith, for being here. Two members of our caucus from the upper chamber, Norm Doyle and Fabian Manning. Great to see you here. And I want to say a special thank you and a special hello to someone who I got to know during my first and second term as a member of Parliament when we ended up on a trip together, on a delegation. And Bill Matthews, former MP, is here as well. Bill, it's great to see you here. Thanks so much for coming by, and your lovely wife Vera is here as well. Thank you very much for being here. It has been such a great trip for me, even though I've only been here for about 24 hours. I landed just before the regatta and raced down to the pond and saw the last two races, and what a wonderful event. The community of St. John's really came out in full force. It was my first experience at that wonderful event. Learned all about it. Learned about regatta roulette, something that a term that was unfamiliar to me, and I got to tell you, it's a pretty unique Newfoundland tradition to think that public holiday could be dependent on the weather. I think that is there's something uniquely Canadian about that. You know, when we suffer through long winters, that's something that we can all share in the experience from coast to coast. It makes sense to say that a day off might depend on the weather, and you might want to put it off to a very good day rather than a cold and windy day. And then, of course, I got to experience the George Street Festival afterwards, and I thought it would be very important to spend some time there, you know, to really, you know, show my dedication to meeting and greeting the people of St. John's. So we did invest a good amount of time last night, and thankfully this morning wasn't too early of a start. But it's such a great time to be here. I came here almost right away after winning the leadership in 2017. Our leadership date was May 27th. We had a few weeks left in the sitting. And I wanted to come right back to Atlantic Canada right afterwards. So we lost every seat here in 2015, and we've been shut out of Newfoundland for some time. And I want to change that. You know, the election night starts in Newfoundland, and I want to see in Newfoundland the start that the change will bring to make sure that the Conservative Party comes back to government. The Liberal Party went 32 for 32 in Atlantic Canada. But I believe the people of Atlantic Canada have gone 0 for 32 ever since. Because we have in every region in Atlantic Canada members of Parliament who don't stand up for their constituencies. They only stand up for their political masters in Ottawa. And there may not be a better example of that, or a worse example of that, than right here in Newfoundland, with 7 MPs who have failed to stand up and represent their constituents on literally any issue. I've only been here for about, as I said, 24 hours so far on this trip. And I've heard the term Silent 7 probably about a dozen times already. And the reason why they're getting known by that name is because when we look at all the different issues that the people of this province expect their representatives to be a strong voice for, they've been silent on it. We've got a huge scandal with the surf clan. We've got a situation where a minister has taken quota away and given it to a company that didn't exist 5 days before that decision was taken, that didn't have boats, that was given to be managed by a former Liberal MP and given to the brother of a sitting Liberal MP. I mean, that doesn't pass anybody's smell test. No matter what your definition of ethics and politics is, that fails to meet the very basic standards of decency and transparency in this country. And Conservatives are the only ones in the House of Commons who are standing up for the people in that community and the people in that industry. And we are proud and will continue to be that strong voice for the people of this province to protect that very important issue. When we look at other issues, you know, I come from Saskatchewan, and there are a lot of similarities. I don't want to talk too much about apples and oranges, and obviously challenges on the prairies are different than the challenges in Atlantic Canada, but you know, there's a lot of similarities between the challenges that our two provinces have faced over the years. And when I look at what this federal Liberal government has done to chase away investment in the energy sector. And when you look at the billions and billions of dollars that have left all over Canada for other countries that are proud of their energy industry. We've got a prime minister who travels around the country and travels around the world apologizing for the very industry that provides employment to hundreds of thousands of Canadians from coast to coast, that provides the revenues for provinces like this to pay for schools and healthcare and roads. He went to Europe and said that his goal was to phase out the energy sector. We deserve, as Canadians, a prime minister and a government that is proud of our energy sector, that will champion it around the world and will welcome investment to create more opportunities for hardworking Canadian families. And I got to tell you, it's a little frustrating for me. It's frustrating to watch some radical groups do everything they can to block development. You know, whether it's a pipeline through British Columbia or if it's an offshore development here in Newfoundland. I see a lot of them protesting Canadian projects that are subject to the world's most stringent environmental standards, projects that respect labor legislation and workplace safety, projects that provide dividends to Canadian workers and pension plans and individual savings for Canadians. They try to block those projects, but I don't see them standing, blockading, hanging down from bridges, up and down the St. Lawrence as tanker after tanker of foreign oil comes into Canada, bringing foreign energy into our markets. And a Conservative Party would do everything we can, a Conservative government, to bring back energy east that would take Western Canadian oil into Eastern markets for refining, creating those jobs in Atlantic Canada in many different parts of this region. That's a commitment that a Conservative government is proud to make to the people of this country. Yeah. And Mike, you mentioned that we're winning. We're winning on a lot of different areas. And I want to thank everyone in this room, anyone who's ever knocked on a door, licked an envelope, put up a campaign sign, anyone who's ever got frostbite from campaigning during winter months, and anyone who's ever gotten staple through the finger putting up a poster. We've got a much more dynamic grassroots organization than any other political party. And you can see that in so many different areas. Last quarter, we out-fundraised the Liberals by a factor of 2 to 1. So thank you to everyone in this room who was a part of that. Those funds are so incredibly important. We have to get our positive message out. And I don't know if you've noticed, this may be something that you missed, but sometimes Conservatives don't get a fair shake in the national media. I hate to break it to you, but sometimes it's a little tougher. It's tougher for us to get our message out. It's tougher for us to put things in a fair context and to sometimes even just get the coverage. You know, I've been all throughout this country all summer, and everywhere I go, I hear from people saying, you know, you got to get out more. You got to get more visible. And sometimes I say, well, I'm currently out. You know, I'm currently out in front of you. I'm giving speeches. I'm doing everything I can to introduce myself and our vision to Canadians. And sometimes the media doesn't cover that. Meanwhile, you know, if Justin Trudeau takes his shirt off and goes jogging, he's on the front page and on the lead item in the 6 o'clock news. So that's what we're up against. So we need your support to help make sure that we have the resources to get that message out. We're winning in the House of Commons as well. Just yesterday, the Liberals, after months of pressure from the Conservative opposition and a growing number of premiers across the country, we've got Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, we've got Premier Ford in Ontario now, and hopefully soon we'll have more premiers across the country joining the fight against the carbon tax. Yeah. Now, my first trip to Atlantic Canada, I was very fortunate enough to be taken out on a lobster boat to be introduced to that industry, and I had all 5 kids with me out on the boat. It was fantastic. I learned a lot about everything from the life cycle of a lobster to how quota systems work. And it was a great opportunity, kind of as not just as professional development, learning about that, but also as a dad, because I got to introduce my kids who grew up on the prairies to that part of this part of Canada. And it was great. My son Henry was 6 years old at the time, and I remember him looking out the bow of the boat into the vast expanse, and he looked up with big wide eyes, and he said, "Dad, this is the biggest lake I've ever seen." Well, that's learning a little bit about geography won't hurt the kids throughout this. But that fisherman told me that the #1 input cost that they have is fuel. And there's no way a carbon tax is going to make that family business any more profitable, and it's only going to hurt his quality of life and the quality of life of his family. We know the same thing for every aspect of the fishing industry. We know it's going to chase away oil and gas development. So yesterday, the Liberals have announced that they're retreating. They're in full retreat on the carbon tax. They've announced that big businesses, big companies, big, large emitters have got a special deal now, that the carbon tax will only apply to as little as 10% of their emissions. 90% of their, up to 90% of their emissions will be exempt from the Liberal carbon tax. Now, that doesn't do anything for hardworking Canadians. It doesn't do anything for consumers. And it doesn't do anything for people employed in the energy sector that have already seen their jobs threatened and moved offshore into other countries. But it's a sign that we're winning when even they acknowledge that their plans will hurt Canadian businesses. We believe that all Canadians should be exempt from the carbon tax, not just big companies with special deals. And we're winning at the ballot box after months of hard work and by saying the same things in every region. You know, I deliver the same core message everywhere I go about smaller government, lower taxes, about the responsibility to leave balanced budgets, not just because we like black ink on the ledger book, but because we know it's unjust to take money away from future generations, leave them with the credit card bill from this generation. I've been talking about the need for self-sustaining energy policy that sees Canada independent from foreign energy. And with that very same message, talking about responsible government, greater freedoms, we're winning at the ballot box. We just recently won a seat in Quebec that we haven't won since 1997. That tells me that we can win anywhere. And if there's anywhere where that has inspired me more, it's right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm very confident that we're going to take seats back in the next election with your support and support of everyone in the room. I think more and more Canadians are realizing that what they're getting from this Liberal government is that the very people that they claim to help, the very things they claim to stand up for, the very people are hurt by the policies that they're introducing. Time and time again, we see the hypocrisies, the hypocritical actions that they bring in. They say they're going to lower taxes for the middle class. They bring in new taxes on everything from beer and wine to carbon to higher payroll taxes. They say they're going to stand up for the world's most vulnerable, but then they let thousands and thousands of people cross into Canada illegally who are already in a safe country, who are in a safe situation. Meanwhile, those in the world's most truly dangerous places now have to wait longer because resources are going to prosecute those who are coming to process those coming in illegally. They say that they stand up for individual human rights and individual liberties here in Canada. But then they impose a values test for Canada Summer Jobs funding that violates the very principles that are enshrined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So more and more Canadians are seeing the truth about this government. And I get people everywhere I go. You know, last year a lot of people, when they recognized me, would say, "Hey, you're the new leader of the Conservative Party. Good luck." Now they're coming up to me, they're grabbing my arm, they're squeezing it very tightly, and they're saying, "You have to win next time in 2019. And I'm very motivated to do just that. I'm working very hard. My caucus colleagues are working very hard. We're going to continue doing that now through the next election. But I need all of your help to do it. If you've ever been involved in a campaign before, or if you've never been involved in a campaign before but you'd like to help, it's going to take a lot of work to win seats back here. But I'm confident, all of us working together, everyone who's capable of picking up the phone or putting an envelope in the mail, if we all work together, if we stay true to those conservative principles, and we take that positive conservative message about how our party truly lifts people out of poverty, truly increases the quality of life for all Canadians, all of us working together across the country, starting here in Newfoundland when those results coming in first, we can and we will make sure that Justin Trudeau is a one-term Prime Minister. So thanks very much, everyone. It's been great to visit with you.